Hello, long time no see, long time no talk. In case you have been wondering where I've been, I cracked a rib, and while I have felt like reading, I have not felt like filming videos. But I'm pretty much almost done healing up, and so I'm ready to film again. But it turns out I'm in my mid 40s and I need to accept that I'm not 20 anymore, and I can't do some of the acrobatic things that I used to do when I was younger without hurting myself. So I did have some footage filmed of the pets, and I'll put that at the end of this video so that you can watch that if you want. But I didn't obviously have a chance to do the vlog videos. It's just going to be one April wrap-up video. But I hope everything's been going good with you. I did a couple buddy reads in April. The first one I did was Book, Line, and Sinker by Jenn McKinlay. This is the third book in the library mystery series, I think it's called. With this being the third book in this series, it feels like the characters and the town are all kind of getting settled and everything is coming together. It feels like there's not so many new characters in every book, and there's a certain rhythm to this series that I have grown accustomed to. Oh, by the way, so I buddy read this with Dia over at Novel Idea, and we've really been enjoying this series. It's about a woman named Lindsay who is a librarian in a small town. She's got a group of friends, and it's just very quaint and cozy and fun. And she's also got a dog named Heathcliff. In this book, they're on the water in Connecticut. And in this book, somebody decides they want to try to find some lost treasure out in the water because they think that they found a map. And it brings all this excitement and fun to the town. Of course, there's media and a bunch of treasure hunters that show up. And with it being a cozy mystery, of course, someone gets murdered, and there's that whole mystery. And this book was so far my favorite book in this series. I really enjoyed it. Then we read Read It and Weep. This is the fourth one. Obviously, we're going in order. And this one has a Midsummer Night's Dream theme to it because they're putting on that play at the local theater. And I thought the mystery part of this wasn't as exciting as the last book, but it was still a really enjoyable book. And if you haven't read this series and you like cozy mysteries, or you think you might like cozy mysteries, I really recommend this series. Then I also buddy read Dune Messiah with my friend Kristin over at Enter the Book. This book is the second book in the Dune series, and according to the introduction of the book, it's thought of as one of the lesser favorite books in the Dune series. Sorry, that's Olive in the background. Puppy. I would say the first 2/3 of the book are very political and a little bit dry. There's a lot of information about power, how to get it, how to keep it, why people want it. I'll never understand why people want it, but it does go pretty deep into that in here. And I feel like it gave me a little bit of a better understanding of politicians. The last third of the book is where things really picked up. It became more adventurous and more high-paced and a lot more enjoyable. And even though this book was not by far anywhere near as good as the first Dune book, it really sets things up for the next book, which is Dune Children, which Kristin and I will be reading in May. I forgot to mention I gave this 3 stars. Then I read The Hound of the Baskervilles by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. What a name. This was the April pick for the Killer Reads book club, and I will put a link to the Discord for that group down in the description box. You are very welcome to join us if you would like to do so. In this book, Watson is trying to help somebody find out if there is this ghostly beast that has killed their ancestors and might kill them. And I thought it was a fun read. It was somewhat predictable at times, but I also enjoyed that it's centered around Watson and not Sherlock Holmes, because I found him to be kind of obnoxious. He reminded me of Poirot from Agatha Christie's books. And my favorite character in the book was the moors, which is the countryside that this book takes place in. I thought it was very eloquently written, and I wanted to read you a little excerpt. And this is just from the introduction, when the person that wrote the introduction is talking about why they love this book so much. The wagonette swung round into a side road, and we curved upward through deep lanes worn by centuries of wheels. High banks on either side, heavy with dripping moss and fleshly heart's tongue ferns. Bronzing bracken and mottled bramble gleamed in the light of the sinking sun. Still steadily rising, we passed over a narrow granite bridge and skirted a noisy stream which gushed swiftly down, foaming and roaring amid the gray boulders. To Sir Henry's eyes all seemed beautiful, but to me a tinge of melancholy lay upon the countryside, which bore so clearly the mark of a waning year. Yellow leaves carpeted the lanes and fluttered down upon us as we passed. The rattle of our wheels died away as we drove through drifts of rotting vegetation, sad gifts, as it seemed to me, for nature to throw before the returning air of the Baskervilles. So if you like that writing, definitely give this book a chance. I gave this one 4 stars. I decided to go ahead and get 2 books that had been mentioned as must-reads by different people, whether it be on BookTube or Instagram. So I decided to give 2 of them a chance. And I didn't read the synopsis or anything before I got them, or after I got them. I just started reading them. The first one was The Vegetarian by Han Kang. And I thought this one would be perfect because I could use it as a book towards my World of Horror challenge that I'm doing. This was my pick for South Korea. So in this book, it's a very peculiar book. And it's also written, though, in South Korea. So it's a very different world, than we live in here. And there's a woman who decides that she's going to become a vegetarian because she's been having these weird nightmares. And the book is broken into, I guess you would say, 3 acts. The first one is from the point of view of her husband and how much her becoming a vegetarian has changed his life. And then the second act is from the point of view of her brother-in-law and how much her becoming a vegetarian has changed his life. And then the third act is from the view of her sister and also how much it's changed her life. And what this book really is about is being who we really are in spite of what our friends, family, or the community wants or expects us to be, and to what lengths we're willing to go to do that. And sometimes it feels like one of the few things that we can actually control is our body, and maybe what we put in it, what we do with it, and maybe also our actions. But what else can we control in life? This book was very artistic. At times it was very beautiful and poetic. At other times it was really gross and disgusting. It kind of felt like an acid trip, but in a book. It was hard to read at times and it was difficult to understand, but I did think it was interesting. I might even reread it at some point because I'm not sure that I understood everything the author was trying to say. It might take more than one read to get there. And that made me appreciate it quite a bit. I guess the horror part of this book is just how much other people want to control who we are and what we do. I think our society is really big on that. I feel this way and I live my life this way, so everybody else should too. Well, it's no different in this book. Then I read, this book was crazy too. The Girl in 6E by A.R. Torrey. This book was a wild ride. I had no idea what it was about. But it's an erotic thriller, which I didn't know that when I got it. So I was very surprised. It's a very fascinating read about the sex cam industry and someone that works in it. And there's definitely some surprises in there. There was times when I was really rooting the protagonist on, and other times where I was kind of nauseated by different things that she was doing. This book is very gratuitous and kinky and fetishist. So if you're offended by that, this is probably not the book for you. Sometimes I really did hate the character, and sometimes, like I said, I was cheering her on. But I couldn't put the book down. I found it very fascinating and appealing to read. And I learned a lot about different parts of an industry that I know nothing about. There are 2 more books in this series, and I'm trying to decide if I'm want to read another one. I do, but I don't know if I have the time or the wherewithal to read another one. But then I also want to know what happens. So if you have any thoughts on whether I should read the next one, let me know. I gave this one 4 stars. My book of the month selection was All the Dangerous Things by Stacy Willingham. I don't think this came out in April. No, it was a December pick, but none of the April books really jumped out at me, so I chose this instead. And I'm really glad I did. This book is about a woman named Izzy, whose son was kidnapped right from his bedroom, and she can't sleep. It's hard to eat. Her whole world has been consumed by trying to find her son. This is an unreliable narrator, and the book has 2 storylines, her life now and her life when she was a child. The book was somewhat predictable, but the subplots were very twisty and really kept me going. And I felt like I was learning about Izzy's past and what really happened in it along with her, which really, really kept me engrossed. It also talks about mothering and how much our society kind of gaslights women, where it's like you have to have a kid, then when you have one, you have to love being a mother, almost turn it into a religion where you're posting 8 pictures a day of your child and you think of nothing but how much you love being a mother, and you never knew love until you had a kid, and your life didn't start until the day you became a mom, and you have to be a certain kind of mom, and no matter what kind of mom you are, it's never good enough. I've had so many women tell me that, just every single decision a woman makes as a mother is wrong. So whether they breastfeed or not, how long they breastfeed for, what kind of formula they use, whether or not they use real diapers or they use cloth diapers, and it goes on and on and on, with people really, other women especially, just really judging each other about what kind of mom they are and why they're not the kind of mom they think they should be, or why aren't they better. It sounds not very fun. But I just thought it was such a fascinating, enjoyable read. I couldn't put it down. And I love that Izzy had some personal growth in the book as well. I liked it so much. I think it might be one of my top 10 books of the year. Maybe my number 1 book of the year. But that's how good I thought it was. So it was a 5-star read, hands down. I enjoyed A Flicker in the Dark, also by her, but not as much as this one. To me, this book was, wow, it was really good. I recommend going into most of the books that I've talked about today blind. I think sometimes the less we know about a book, the better. It just feels like it's so much more surprising and exciting to just pick a book up and start reading it, having no idea what it's about. And that's what I did with this one, and I'm really glad that I did. I read Firefly Lane by Kristin Hanna. And this book was a little bit surprising to me. If you've read Kristin Hanna books, and you've read a lot of them, you know that the first chunk of books that she read were really women's fiction slash kind of romance-ish kind of books. And then she started doing historical fiction. And I think this is a book that was between those two worlds for her. So there's a little bit of both in here. And I have found that when I was younger, or if I was going through turmoil or something, I loved women's fiction. I loved romance. It fed my soul. But I'm at a point in my life now where that no longer feeds my soul because I'm not in that place anymore. I'm not feeling lost, and I'm not feeling like I need that kind of nourishment. I'm getting that from other places. And so that part of this book for me was very boring and drawn out and maybe over dramatic and a little too angsty. But the historical fiction part of the book, I really enjoyed. It was really fun reading about the greater Seattle area in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I grew up there, so it was fun to read about different areas that I know about. There was a lot of references to Bainbridge Island, which is right near where I grew up. And they even mentioned the mall that I worked in high school, and for about almost 10 years after that, I worked in different stores in that mall. So it was kind of weird to read about somewhere I've actually been and worked. It's about two friends that meet when they're kids. One is beautiful and popular and everybody loves her, and the other one is an unattractive book nerd. It's like so predictable, right? But I know a lot of people really cherish this book and the TV show as well, so I'm not going to put it down too much. But yeah, it just didn't hit me the way I thought it would. For me, it was like a 3-star read, if I'm being nice, maybe a 2.5-star read. And I tried to watch the show, and the one thing I really liked about this book, they changed in the show, and I thought, okay, not doing that either. I also read Halsey Street by Naima Coster, and this one, it's easier to tell you what it's about just to read this one little part here. A modern day story of family, loss, and renewal. Halsey Street captures the deeply human need to belong, not only to a place, but to one another. This book was very casual and cozy. I thought the writing was enjoyable. At times, it kind of had a Dutch House by Anne Patchett feel. There's a lot of references to gentrification in this book. It takes place in Brooklyn, and there's a lot of references to her mother not being what she wanted her to be. It really got me thinking about, can we ever really go home? Even if we go home, and are the same people going to be there? Are new things going to have been built? Does the feel of the town or city feel the same? I don't know that we can go home. I think home is a place in our heart, but not an actual place that we can go. And if you do have an actual home that you can go back to, consider yourself very lucky, because I don't think many of us do. But I think it really just highlighted for me how much we have to find happiness within ourselves. We can't blame our friends, our parents, our community for our unhappiness. As my husband just said when he walked by, home is a romanticized memory, which I agree with that. Then I read Secrets, which is the #2 book in the Sweet Valley High series. I thought this was a really fun read. I just love these books. I find them to be a very nice palate cleanser, and they're very cheerful. So if I'm having a day where I'm feeling very down or things are making me really sad, these Francine Pascal books are the way to go. They're just, I don't have to really think a lot. I don't have to remember a lot. I can just read and enjoy and kind of laugh at how overly dramatic these high school girls are. I will say that after reading 2 of these, it seems that Jessica lacks foresight and is very selfish and does things without thinking about how they might affect other people, especially her twin sister Elizabeth. And Elizabeth, usually by the end of the book, gets some kind of revenge on her. So it's good that she doesn't let her get away with her selfishness, but will she ever stop being selfish? Probably not. And these books, to me, they kind of read like a sitcom where there's a problem and by the end of the book it's solved. Then I read Silas Marner. A few booktubers have highly recommended this book. I enjoyed it, but I had a hard time reading it. I found it very slow and boring at times. I've been spoiled with so many 5-star classic books that sometimes it's hard to read those that aren't that exciting and thrilling and epic. But in this book, Silas gets wrongfully accused of stealing. He gets kicked out of the town that he lives in. He moves and he turns his job into his entire life, and he saves up money. And does it say on here? His money is stolen, and that's the only thing that he enjoys about life, is looking at and playing with his money. So then in a twist of fate, he ends up taking in an orphan, and she is just the light of his life. And I thought this book really read like a fairy tale. It was very sweet. For me, the meaning or the moral of the story is, if you turn a blessing at your door away, another person will take and enjoy that blessing. But I thought it was worth a read. I give this one 3 stars. Okay, and then I had a book that I had picked up at a Goodwill for like $1. One of the times my mom was here in town, so I think it was 6 months or a year ago. And I got it because the cover just was fascinating, and it had this nice vintage look that I enjoyed. And that is Naked Once More by Elizabeth Peters. In this book, we follow Jacqueline. Jacqueline used to be a librarian, and now she is a best-selling author. And Jacqueline and a few other authors have been picked to try to write a sequel to a best-selling book that an author who has gone missing wrote. She's been missing for years, and everybody is assuming that she has died. So before she went missing, this author wrote an outline to her book. And so whoever writes an outline the closest to hers is the one that is going to write the book. I know it sounds kind of weird, but so Jacqueline goes to this town. She's working on an outline. She's researching this author and her life and trying to find out who she was and what happened to her. And it was just really, really fun. The writing in here is really fun. And I think this book has one of the best opening lines I've ever read. All across America, there are strange little roads that lead nowhere. I thought that was a really great opening sentence. The protagonist, Jacqueline, she's so fabulous. And she's direct, and she's a no-nonsense lady, and I just adored spending time with her. And I had no idea what this book was about when I bought it, and even reading the synopsis, it didn't really quite make sense to me. But what really grabbed me, because I'm a mood reader and I was going through my TBR shelves trying to figure out what to read next, was this. Such marvelous fun that you'll want to read it at a gulp. But don't gulp, sip. Remember, Elizabeth Peters isn't merely magnificent. She's also sneaky. And it was Charlotte McLeod that said that. I want to read more books by this author now. I enjoyed it so much, and it was a little slow in the beginning, but the writing is so good I didn't care. And then as it went on, it kept building in momentum. It has a bit of a cozy mystery feel to it, and it also feels a little bit like if you were to read an Indiana Jones book. I don't even know if those were books. I'm assuming they were. but there's something very adventurous and historical about the writing. And I just loved this book so much. It's a perfect example of why I love reading. And I gave it 5 stars. So that was my April. I've been reading a lot of books in May as well. I'm doing the Horror Mayhem reading. I don't know if it's a readathon. I think it's a readathon, but I'm participating in that and I'm having fun. I'm doing buddy reads with Kristin and Dia again, and yeah, I've just got a lot of fun books that I'm reading, and I'm making plans for June. I've got something fun that I'm going to be doing in June that I'll let you know about soon. I'm going to go ahead and slide in some of the videos that I had originally filmed for my vlog in the beginning of April. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day or night. Let me know if you've read any of these books or if you want to read any of these books. Happy reading. Bye. It's Olive's first Stanley Cup playoff game in our house. She's got a new toy and a new jersey, and she is on cloud 9. It's the cutest thing. Puppy. Puppy, do you like your toy? You do? Oh, that's what you do when they score, right? Every time they score? Such a good girl. You having fun?